Hello, today we're going to have a virtual coffee talk about the U.S. Service Academies. Topics will include an overview of the 5 United States Service Academies, the Service Academy decision, why you should or should not apply to a Service Academy, eligibility and qualifications for the Service Academies, the application, nomination, and appointment process for each Service Academy. Remember that appointment means the acceptance into one of the Service Academies. The official Service Academy preparatory schools and programs. Final steps in the process for applying to a Service Academy. What happens after you're appointed or accepted to a Service Academy. Final thoughts and tips. And then at the end, we'll have some websites and resources. There are 5 United States Service Academies: the U.S. Military Academy, West Point, New York; the U.S. Naval Academy, Annapolis, Maryland; the United States Coast Guard Academy, New London, Connecticut; the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, New York; and the U.S. Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs in Colorado. These academies are ordered by the date of their founding. Next, we're going to look at the Service Academy decision. This is probably one of the most important considerations in the presentation today. So we want to know, if you want to attend a Service Academy, why do you choose to attend a Service Academy? The first thing is, you should have a strong desire to serve in the Armed Services or Merchant Marine. The Service Academies come with a commitment to serve in these branches. Second, you should understand that the Service Academies provide for an excellent college education. These are among the most elite and challenging colleges in the country. They are on the same level as perhaps an Ivy League school. You should know that the Service Academies provide excellent career opportunities, not only in the military, but if you choose to leave after your obligation is met, you're going to have an excellent education, and you're also going to have an excellent experience of leadership. You should also know that there is a commitment after being in a Service Academy to become a commissioned officer and leader in the armed services. You also, as a student, you earn a salary while you're in the Service Academy. Keep in mind, however, with the exception of the U.S. Merchant Marine, where you do receive full financial aid and tuition, but no pay as a midshipman. So that's the one exception to the 5 Service Academies. Why should you not attend a Service Academy? You should not attend a Service Academy just because it does offer a full cost of attendance scholarship with pay and a guaranteed job after graduation, unless you have a strong and sincere desire to serve in military leadership and to follow through with that commitment. Commitment is generally 5 years after you graduate from the Service Academy that you have to remain as an officer in the armed services. You should also, as a potential applicant, understand the demanding workload, the very regimented lifestyle, your restricted social life, and the extended service and military obligations that will come when you make the Service Academy decision. Next, we'll examine the basic eligibility requirements for Service Academies. First, you must be a United States citizen. You must be of good moral character. You must be between the ages of 17 and not past your 23rd birthday as of July 1st of the year that you would enter the Academy. It's 22 years old for the Coast Guard and 25 for the Merchant Marine. You must be unmarried, not pregnant, and you must have no incurred obligations of parenthood. This means you can have no dependents and no children. You must meet the physical, security, suitability, and character requirements necessary for commission into the U.S. Armed Services and Reserves. Next, we'll examine the basic qualifications for admission into a Service Academy. First, potential students should have excellent academic records. They should have high test scores on the SAT and ACT and they cannot take these tests under any testing accommodations. Those are not permitted for tests submitted to the service academies. You must be physically fit and have good athletic prowess. You should have a quality extracurricular and community activity resume, specifically with attributes towards leadership. You should have demonstrated peer leadership. And you will need a congressional or other nomination except for the Coast Guard Academy. Next, we'll take a look at some statistics for appointed cadets and midshipmen to the various academies. 95% of all accepted cadets or midshipmen are students with at least a 3.0 GPA. 30% have a weighted GPA exceeding a 4.0. 70% are in the top fifth of their classes for graduation. 10% were either valedictorians or salutatorians within their graduating class. 60% were members of the National Honor Society. 80% earned a varsity letter. 60% were captains of a varsity athletic team. 69% held student office in student government. Let's take a look at the admission process for the service academies. The process begins with opening a preliminary application to each service academy that you choose to apply to. You next will contact your regional admissions team members. We'll talk more about those in a few minutes. You will have to complete all items on your candidate portal. You will have to arrange for all necessary documents such as recommendations, transcripts to be submitted. You will have to arrange for your candidate fitness assessment. You will have to complete a medical clearance process through the Department of Defense. And you will have to apply for a nomination, except in the case of the Coast Guard Academy. We're going to take a look at your academy admissions team. Each academy has a local part-time representative or representatives that are part of your admission team. For West Point, these representatives are referred to as Field Force Representatives. In the Navy, they're blue and gold officers. For the Coast Guard, they're Academy admission partners. In the Merchant Marine, they're local admission field representatives. And in the Air Force, they're Academy liaison officers known as ALOs. You want to connect with your admissions team as you begin the application process. So first, you would find your local representatives through each academy's website. You will get in touch with them early and work with them throughout the process. They are very important to you. There are also regional directors of admissions who work at the academies. Contact them when or if the local representatives won't do, or if you need further assistance. If applicable, contact Academy diversity offices or athletic departments for more assistance. Next, we're going to look at the candidate portal. The candidate portal serves as your primary communications tool throughout the admission process. You get access to your candidate portal when you pass the initial evaluation assessment. Everything on your portal must be completed for you to be admitted. Depending on your situation, additional items may appear on your portal. Check your portal on a regular basis, at least once a week. Next, we're going to look at the documentation that you will need. The candidate portal will list all documents required. You must get references from specific teachers, academic teachers primarily, and employers, though you can submit additional ones as needed. Some material will be uploaded to your portal by others, but you are still responsible for making sure it is submitted and completed. As part of the application process, candidates must complete a fitness assessment. They call this the CFA. How does the CFA work? All candidates must take the CFA. The same one can be used if you're applying to multiple academies. The CFA can be administered by a PE teacher, coach, among others. Candidates must make their own arrangements, including location. Typically, you would want a school gym or maybe a fitness center. These are appropriate places that will meet the requirements. You should prepare ahead of time, even if you think you're fit, because of the rigors and importance of passing the CFA. The test is a pass-fail for each item. What's on the CFA? The first event is the basketball throw. Then you will need to do pull-ups. Women may do flexed arm hang instead. Shuttle run, modified sit-ups similar to crunches, push-ups, a 1-mile run. They look at maximums and averages provided for each event. There are minimums for each one, but you aren't told what they are ahead of time. As part of the application process, you'll have to have a medical clearance. This is the Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board. All candidates must go through a comprehensive medical evaluation administered by the Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board. Academies do not schedule your evaluation until they've decided you're competitive as a candidate. You are notified through your candidate portal. Results are provided on the candidate portal and the Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board website. Your medical evaluation clearance process and outcomes. The outcomes come in different forms. You could be qualified, you could be disqualified, or you could be remedial. Remedial means more tests or documents will need to be completed and submitted. Disqualified means that the Academy will automatically consider you for a waiver. The Academies can waive a disqualification and admit you anyway. Each Academy makes its own decisions on the disqualification process. You are automatically considered for a waiver. You do not need to request it from the Academy. Even if you're qualified, you must notify the Department of Defense Medical Evaluation Review Board if your health changes in any way. The Academies will review medical red flags. This is how you would manage the process. Medical red flags are not necessarily disqualifying to a candidate. If you have one, be sure to get your medical records organized and, if possible, arrange your own pre-tests. Time is of the essence. Respond quickly to any inquiries on your candidate portal. Medical red flags. Let's look at some examples. One might be asthma, seasonal allergies, or inhaler use. Any type of learning disability or ADHD. Vision. You may wear glasses. Those are generally okay for correcting your vision. Hearing loss outside an acceptable range without use of a hearing aid. Surgery, concussion, head injuries, or any conditions requiring regular medication, such as perhaps a cardiac condition, things like that. The Academies will also consider other medical issues. Drug and alcohol use. If you have minor drug or alcohol use, this is not necessarily disqualifying. However, lying about this throughout the process is a very bad idea. There are also restrictions on tattoos, brands, body piercings, body modifications. Each branch service has a set standard policy, so you can look on each branch, for example, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, and they will list what their restrictions are. For example, generally for tattoos, you cannot have any tattoos that are on your head, face, neck, or hands. You usually cannot have any tattoos that are racist or insightful in some ways, things like that. There are also height and weight restrictions. Each service academy has minimum and maximum requirements, and they vary from academy to academy. So that information is also on their websites. Next, we're going to take a look at the nomination process. So you will need a nomination and an appointment to enroll in a service academy, except for the United States Coast Guard, which does not require a nomination. Remember that a nomination is different than an appointment. The appointment is your ultimate acceptance to a service academy, whereas a nomination is just part of the process in the application. There are multiple sources of nominations. You should apply for each and every one for which you are eligible. While a nomination is an absolute requirement for admission, it's not as terrifying as it seems to get one. Next, we're going to examine the sources of nominations. Every applicant or candidate can apply for the following. You can always apply to your House member in the House of Representatives. This would be your congressman for the area in which you live. Also, if a student lives in a U.S. territory, they have certain delegates that would fall into that category. Every student can apply for both senators in the state in which they reside. They can also apply for the vice president, and this would be located on the vice president's website. I will say that the Merchant Marine Academy, you cannot use the vice president as a nominator. You would have to use your senators or congressmen. Also, keep in mind that the U.S. Coast Guard does not require a nomination, so only the other 4 service academies do. There are also some limited eligible applicants. These refer to presidential nominations. So for presidential nominations, there's 3 types. The first is children of wounded, killed, or missing veterans. The second is for children of active duty or retired military personnel. And the last one would be for children who have won the Congressional Medal of Honor, whose parents have won the Congressional Medal of Honor. You can also get a nomination if you're a current member in the military or in the U.S. Reserves. And you can get a nomination if you are in an honor unit with distinction in either junior ROTC or ROTC. Let's take a look at the nomination details. Most members of Congress award 10 nominations to each academy per year. So these would be congressmen and senators. They actually have only 1 to 2 nomination allotments that can be filled for each academy. Everyone on the list, however, is considered to have been nominated. If you don't win your district, you are considered for additional nominations automatically. We'll take a more detailed look at the congressional nomination process. For each of your congressmen or senators, you would locate the Service Academy nominations on their website. You would download and review all the forms and instructions for the application. Each member runs the process differently, so your congressman or your senator each may have their own process. The process is usually run by staff members. You may or may not actually meet or interview with the Congress member. Be sure you watch your deadlines. Each congressman or senator may set an earlier or later deadline. The normal steps in the process are to submit your SAT and ACT scores. Congressional offices have numbers that they're looking for, just like colleges would. You also may be required to write 1 or more essays. These usually pertain to items like what attracts you to a service academy, why you want to serve in a service academy, what is your ambition for military service or leadership, things like that. You may also be interviewed by a board of representatives from the congressional office or the senator's office. Again, these are usually staff members to begin with. In some cases, you may actually have an opportunity to meet with the actual Congress member. They will have a selection and nomination process. Your senators and members of Congress coordinate together to avoid duplication. You'll only end up with one nomination even if more than one of these individuals wants to nominate you. Next, we're going to talk about the nomination process and which of the congressmen and senators you're most likely to submit an application for in seeking a nomination. Our first U.S. Senator, junior senator, is Senator Rick Scott. You'll see after each member that we will list their website. Usually on their website, you're going to find the location for the Academy application under constituents. Next is U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. Then we have Vice President Mike Pence. And the next series of people we're going to look at are the U.S. representatives from each student's home district. These are the most likely ones because these are the ones who represent different areas of Palm Beach County. The first is District 18, Congressman Brian Mast. Next is District 21, Congressman Ted Deutsch. Then we have District 22, Congresswoman Lois Frankel. And last, District 20, Congressman Alcee Hastings. Next, we're going to look at the Service Academy timelines. It's generally recommended that students interested in applying to Service Academy begin the process earlier than a typical student might for a traditional college. Students should take the SAT and ACT perhaps earlier in the fall of their junior year and continue to take the test throughout their junior year to secure the scores that they feel will be competitive for a nomination and ultimate appointment to each service academy. Students should also reach out to their congressional representatives, their U.S. House of Representative member, or the vice president and their senators in early spring of their junior year. Let's take a look at Service Academy application deadlines. These are for the year 2020. Keep in mind that while the general timeline will be the same in years forward, the actual specific dates may vary from year to year depending on the calendar. The U.S. Military Academy application, this is for West Point, this year was due February 28, 2020. The U.S. Naval Academy application opened on April 1st, 2019, and the application deadline was January 31st, 2020. The U.S. Air Force Academy pre-candidate questionnaire deadline was December 31st, 2019. The candidate kit documents deadline and application deadline was January 31st, 2020. The U.S. Merchant Marine Academy application deadline was February 1st, 2020. All SAT and ACT scores were due by March 1st, 2020. And for the U.S. Coast Guard Academy application, the deadline was January 15th, 2020. Next, we're going to look at general timelines for applying to a service academy. These will be the same year in and year out, generally speaking. January to June of your junior year, you want to begin the application process, including the application form, SAT and ACT exams, and contacting congressional representatives during the spring of your junior year. June to January of your senior year, you want to secure your congressional nominations. Those will be sent to the service academies with a deadline of around January 31st of your senior year. Between December and February, applications will be due. The exact dates vary depending on the specific service academy and the academic or year calendar for each year. In January to March, appointments are received and must be accepted or denied. Dates vary based on the service academy. Remember, if you receive an appointment, that is the same as receiving an admission, and you must notify the Academy if you will accept or deny that acceptance. Next, we're going to take a look at some specific special situations. The first is recruited athletes. Each of the service academies does Division I sports, so recruited athletes, just like for a regular college, may have some specific different requirements. The first thing to know is that all candidates, even if they are recruited athletes, they must meet all other requirements for the service academy, including those congressional or vice presidential or presidential nominations. Everyone at all the service academies receives free tuition, room, board, and all medical and dental expenses. There are no other special benefits outside of that for athletes. If the athletic department wants you, they will serve as your advocates and coaches throughout the process. Check the recruiting section on the sports page for each academy for details on how to apply. So in some cases, students will apply to a service academy and they may be deferred to one of the service academy preparatory schools. We're going to take a look at these. The vast majority of cadets and midshipmen who reach the service academies via the preparatory school route attend each service academy's own prep school. There's no application for these preparatory schools. Selected candidates originate from the qualified nominated applicant pool who do not receive an appointment for the specific academy. So when you apply to the service academy, if you do not receive a nomination, but that service academy feels you're a valid candidate, they may defer you to the preparatory school. The preparatory school also has free tuition if you choose to apply, just like the service academies. The programs last approximately 1 academic year or 10 months. Students who are entered into the academy preparatory schools, they must enlist in the reserves at the lowest enlisted rank and will receive salary at that rank in that branch. Overall, each prep school graduates about 100 to 200 qualified candidates who are then appointed the following year to each of their respective services. Next, we're going to look at the U.S. Service Academy preparatory schools for each of the primary academies. The first is the U.S. Military Academy Preparatory School for the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. The next one is the Naval Academy Preparatory School for the Naval Academy in Annapolis. The Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs has their own Air Force Academy Preparatory School. And the U.S. Coast Guard actually utilizes 3 outside military preparatory schools through the Coast Guard Academy Scholars Program. This program identifies high potential candidates for this preparatory program for then entrance into the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. Lastly, the Merchant Marine Academy prep schools are either the New Mexico Military Institute, generally for students on the west side of the country, or the Marion Military Institute for students on the east side of the country. Next, we'll look at some final steps in the application and appointment process. Remember to check your candidate portal frequently to make sure all the lights are green and all the items are completed. New items are sometimes added by the academies. Acceptances and rejections will also appear on your portal. Visit the academy if at all possible. Some or most even allow overnight visits in the dorms with fellow cadets or midshipmen. If you get a letter of assurance or a letter of encouragement, that's a great sign, but not a guarantee that you will receive an appointment. If you don't get one, don't worry. Most potential cadets or midshipmen do not receive one. Acceptances begin in November, very few, with most occurring later in February. Wait list offers can come only weeks before reporting in. If you don't get in, there's always next year. Some candidates have tried 2 or 3 times before being successful and getting an appointment to an academy. Be enthusiastic and don't be afraid to look for help. Next, we're going to look what happens after your acceptance or appointment to the different military academies. The first step, and perhaps the most important, is the receipt of a security clearance. All midshipmen and cadets must receive a secret clearance. This is done through a form called SF-86, and you'll have to keep this form updated with your security clearance as your clearance changes or needs to be renewed over time. Also keep in mind that you will receive the shoes and boots before you receive the rest of your uniform. They do this so that you can break these in ahead of time. Next thing will be money issues. Keep in mind that as a cadet or midshipman, except for the Merchant Marine, you will receive a salary. You must set up a bank account with a direct deposit authorization form and an initial deposit to your cadet account. You also will have to make travel arrangements and packing lists. Pack exactly what they tell you, no more and no less. You will receive an itemized packing list from the academy. And then you have reporting day. This is very stressful. We would advise you to research this on YouTube channels to demystify the process so that you understand what to expect. Also, if you do visit an academy, have an opportunity to speak with some fellow cadets or midshipmen to get a sense of what that's all about. Lastly, this is specifically important. Be sure to keep up your physical fitness regimen. Be careful not to get injured or have an accident, but be sure to stay in shape. Next, we'll go over some final thoughts and tips. Remember that if you're planning to apply to a service academy, it's best to start early. The earlier the better. We would recommend that you begin thinking about this as early as your freshman or sophomore year, and you begin the actual application process early your junior year. Be sure to complete the nomination application process with each eligible congressional representative or nominator. Make certain a service academy education and the military service obligation that comes with it is what you want to do, not what your parents or others want for you. Develop great time management and study habits. Develop these early and maintain them throughout high school. You will need them at the service academy. Next, don't worry if extracurricular activities that you participate are not military in nature, but be certain to demonstrate leadership, initiative, and long-term commitment to whatever does interest you. Be sure to organize your application. It's extensive and you won't believe how much paperwork there actually goes into it. Be sure to talk to Academy alumni and stay in touch with your Academy admission team officer. They will guide you through the process. Lastly, be sure to send thank you notes to your nominators as well as your admission team members as they support you through the process. Next, here are the websites for the different military academies. The Military Academy at West Point, the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, the Merchant Marine Academy, and the Air Force Academy. Lastly, this website, Today's Military, and they have a separate Service Academy page that's excellent, can be located at this link. Thank you for listening to our presentation today. Be sure to see your school counselor for more information, and be absolutely sure to review the link at the Park Vista website listed below. This link will summarize all the necessary steps and expectations for service academies. It'll also keep updated information for the websites that you need to begin your application process at the service academies, as well as updated information on the congressional members in our area, our United States senators, and our vice president and president. This is important because although the information is listed in this presentation, this information is as of February 2020. Keep in mind that as we move into the future with future elections, your congressmen, senators, president, or vice presidents can or may change over time. Thank you again, and be sure to reach out to your counselor if you have any questions.